do you think how much do you think it's a skill, public speaking, and how much is you're born with?
Oh, I was hoping you were going to ask me that. Actually, I think it is both, honestly. You hear people say, oh no, public speaking definitely is a skill that can be taught, and that is true. And you look at just little kids, and there are some that are more effusive than others. There are some that are given to being just extroverts and introverts. And so we don't all start at the same place. Now, I do solidly believe we can end up at the same place. It's just if I'm born like an introvert and I don't have big movements naturally as a little child, I'm going to have a little bit more work to do. But that's true with intelligence. That's true with so many other things that we look at and we say, okay, maybe person A doesn't have to study as much, but person B does have to study more and builds a work ethic because of having to do that allows them to potentially overcome those natural differences in starting point. Same thing with speaking. So it absolutely is a skill. There are some who start a little further down the line, but it absolutely is a skill that can be taught.
That's interesting. I'm curious, did you have a bunch of small wins in the beginning? Meaning, when you started, was it something that maybe your teachers, your parents picked up on of, wow, he's good at public speaking, let me encourage him? And I give some background to this when we talk about skill versus innate talent. I think it was one of Malcolm Gladwell's books where there is, interestingly, somewhat of a winner effect. Whereas once you start accumulating wins, then you practice more because you like it more. Or if you are good in class, a teacher might see that and say, who's the brightest kid? Let me invest in that.
Right.
And there's some other interesting stats that you can rattle off of how many, I believe it was hockey players are born right at the cutoff.
Right.
So the older kids initially are stronger when the years actually matter, and then they've just trained extra because they like it, that they get better. So did you have any wins like that? What were the first few years of you giving speeches like?
That's such an interesting question because I do remember some of those early wins now that you ask me that, being in the living room and telling a story, or we used to meet another family at Thanksgiving at a lake property, and there were 4 or 5 kids, and we would do a little skit, and I didn't have the lead. I was one of them, but that was enjoyable. But I also remember some big. It's the losses. It's the trauma. And it wasn't really trauma, but I remember there was a time back, at church. My dad was a song leader, and I remember there was a time when I went up on the platform one day and I hugged my dad's leg only to look up and realize it was not my dad, and I'm looking out at the sea of people and I'm hugging this strange person's leg. I remember everyone starts laughing. The thing I remember how embarrassed I was at the time. Now, I don't know what maybe my parents did after that, or if I just slept that aside. Obviously, I remember that, but there was a little bit of both early on.